Well, hello and welcome to Binge Watch, the podcast where we take a look at the hottest new TV and film releases on streaming television platforms. I'm Hannah Fernando, the group editor of Woman and Woman and Home magazine.
And I'm Ian McEwan, writer on TV and Satellite Week, TV Times and What's on TV magazines. And today we're looking at the new releases that will be available on Friday the 5th of July 2024, including film comedy Space Cadet on Prime Video, and schoolgirl sleuthing series A Good Girl's Guide to Murder on BBC iPlayer.
And we'll also be checking out Hugo Weaving in Australian romantic drama Love Me on UKTV Play, and meeting the man with 1,000 kids. What? On Netflix. But first, Ian, what is in the news?
Well, A, I just had COVID in the middle of summer, and B, Riz Ahmed will write, produce and star in an as-yet-untitled Prime Video comedy about a down-on-his-luck thespian set to land the role of his dreams. What else is in the news, Hannah?
David Tennant, Daniel Mays and Jonathan Pryce are joining the cast of Netflix's adaptation of Richard Osman's novel The Thursday Murder Club about 4 crime-solving pensioners. Oh, that sounds very good.
Oh, it's about time David Tennant was in something. Yeah. Anyway, we've got a good selection for you this week. We're going to start over on W and UKTV Play with a new drama series which arrived on Wednesday the 3rd of July. It's called Love Me. And here's a clip.
Being scared's a silly reason not to do something.
You can't control who you fall in love with. No one can. This isn't you.
Jessie, you've never been in love, okay? So you don't actually know what you're talking about.
Do you actually want to be in a relationship? And it's totally fine if you don't. I do. Then what are you doing?
Hugo Weaving, Hannah. He's a versatile fellow, isn't he? Of course, we've seen him in The Matrix as a killer. We've seen him as an elf in Lord of the Rings. Drag queen. Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. He's done the lot. Well, anyway, in this he plays a Melbourne suburbanite who is a full-time carer for his wife, Christine, played by Sarah Pearce. His character's called Glenn. It's a family drama, and it's really looking at the family's relationships with each other and their kind of romantic relationships outside the family and how they are impacted by what happens within the family. So it starts off, there's 2 adult children. There's Kira, played by Bojana Novakovic, and Aaron, played by William Lodder. And the first scene is Kira going on a blind date, sort of Tinder date or whatever. And it's quite a broad comedic blind date scene. It's very funny, I thought. It was good. They meet in a shopping mall and there's a bit of a misunderstanding and he's just a really horrible, sort of seedy bloke. And yeah, I think she works as an anaesthetist and she's sort of talking with her colleagues about her terrible love life. Meanwhile, her brother, we see him, he's studying law and we see him being late for a job interview because he's having it off with his girlfriend. And then we have Glenn, who's out doing the shopping, and he meets a family friend in the supermarket in a scene that's got that kind of trademark Aussie kind of whimsical tone that we've talked about before. Anyway, he's arranging a meal to celebrate the 40th wedding anniversary and the kids are going to come over. And he's a kind of almost like a saintly figure, really. He's booking a dream holiday for his wife, who he cares for. He's having the kids over. Anyway, so I thought, well, I don't know if this is going to be my kind of thing, but then it gets a lot more interesting and a lot darker because we have the family get together and it all turns quite unpleasant because Christine is in a lot of pain. I think she's been in some kind of accident. So she's very angry and she's lashing out and Glenn is trying to kind of gloss over everything, but there's an argument with the daughter. The daughter's arguing with the brother. And then there's a big plot twist, which I'm not going to reveal, but it will impact on all of their lives and on their relationships with each other. So, yeah, I thought it took a very interesting turn, and I particularly like these dramas that quite truthful about, it can be quite unpleasant sometimes being in a family, and they're the people that you will lash out at. And there are these kind of long-standing resentments that often, after a couple of glasses of wine, they will come out. And the choices you make in your romantic life are quite highly influenced by your family background, without getting too therapeutic about it. So, yeah, Weaving is great in this. I mean, he's such a fine actor, isn't he? I'll be interested to see where his character's journey goes. And I thought Novakovic was really good as well. And she kind of, in episode 1, she meets this guy who lives across the road from her, and it looks as if something might develop there. Whereas her brother he's got a kind of real physical connection with his girlfriend, but it's not quite sure if she's the one, to coin a phrase. So yeah, I thought it was pretty good. What did you think, Hannah?
Yeah, do you know what? I enjoyed this, the twists and turns. It's quite hard. You've done very well there to talk about it without revealing the big thing, actually, because it's quite hard to. But there are twists and turns in this, and I think that the interesting part is the family dynamic and how, like you say, your family, you imagine, will be the ones that will be there for you, stand for you, no matter. But actually, they're also the ones that you lash out at the most, and it's not always kind of happy all the time, I suppose, and familiarity breeds contempt, and living with those arguments and wishing you could take things back or wishing that you hadn't said something. So I think all those sort of ducks and weaves and twists and turns are quite good in this, and what I kind of set out thinking would be fairly, not bland, because that's not fair, but sort of a bit stereotypical of this sort of genre. I think it did a really good job of delving that bit deeper into relationships and families, and there'll be lots of areas I think that people can relate to. So yeah, enjoyable.
So now it's the first of a series of dramatic changes in tone in this week's podcast as we move across to Prime Video for a new film comedy which arrived on Thursday the 4th of July. It's called Space Cadet. And here's a clip.
I'm gonna be an astronaut. Oh my god. Wait, come again? Dear NASA. Oh, girl.
This resume will never get you in, but let's make a few changes that will.
Dear NASA, I've accomplished everything I've ever wanted.
Dr. Tiffany Simpson, you have been selected for astronaut training.
I'm gonna be an astronaut!
Yep, I think this has probably got the correct title, because perhaps the person writing it was a bit of a space cadet, because this is literally out of this world in lots of ways. I started watching this and thinking, yeah, I'm going to really enjoy this, and then it kind of just fell off a cliff in places, but yeah, it still was quite appealing, and I didn't give up, if that makes sense. So this is, it starts off with the main character as a child with her mum. She dreams of going to space. They go and, watch a rocket going up, and it's kind of that sort of all-American dream that she wants to go and do something amazing with NASA, and it's just all sort of very sweet and lovely. Then you move forward, you jump forward to when she's, and she's very, very cute as that little girl, I have to say, and then very sweet. And then you jump to later on, and she's grown up, and she still has dreams. She still wants for something more for herself, but her actual real life and everything that's gone on in it has kind of gotten in the way of her living this dream and being able to study and do all the things that she kind of originally wanted to do. So she finds herself, she's a really bubbly, excitable, beautiful person. She's played by Emma Roberts, and she's working in a Florida bar, and she also wrangles alligators. You see what I mean? Space cadet, you kind of get in the picture here. But she's determined to turn her life around. She doesn't want to just carry on doing this, even though she's great behind the bar and she's loved by everybody, and wrangling alligators is, seems easy to her. She wants to turn her life around, but she's got the help of her best friend, Nadine, who's played by Poppy Liu. Now, she has embellished her CV somewhat to include a fake degree, and this means that she can now, she now has experience of flying fighter jets too. So she manages to get onto this NASA course, and she then has to blag her way, through. I mean, she's been selected for this program. She's completely in over her head, and you can see where the fun and games, begin and end here. But she's very she's a very kind of loud, bubbly character, like I said, and probably not your average person that may be on this NASA program. I don't know. Perhaps I'm stereotyping, but she kind of doesn't fit that bill. But that's fine. She's gone on the program. But now it's a race against time to see if she can make it into space before this whole cover is blown. I mean, it's slightly disturbing, the fact that she's got this far. And will anybody, really realise what she's doing? Because of course she's completely out of her depth. So it's very, very funny in places. It's very odd in places. And it's kind of, it's like somebody, I don't know, it does come together, but it's not what you think it's going to be at the very beginning, is what I would say. So it is very funny in places, and I think there's quite good comedy timing in there. But it's just the most kind of erratic, odd story that somebody, has kind of masterminded to create this. So I'd say it's one to watch, but it's quite out there. What do you think, Ian?
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, isn't it? It's definitely got elements of Legally Blonde, I would say, where Reese Witherspoon's character is a fish out of water at law school. But then it's also got elements of things like the kind of Police Academy movies. So, yeah, Emma Roberts, who is Julia Roberts' niece, and her father, Eric Roberts, a famous actor, she's got funny bones. And she is the reason that, for the most part, it works, because as Rex, as she's known, she's just hilarious. She's absolutely brilliant. And you said it's bizarre. I'm not going to say how they do it, but the way that they manage to get the alligator wrestling backstory into the astronaut story is just, it will blow your mind. Her best friend, Nadine, as well, played by Poppy Liu, was very, very funny. She works in a gym, and she's a priceless character. And she's fielding all these phone calls, pretending to be all these different referees that she has put onto her mate's fake CV. So, yeah, I think it kind of goes off the rails a bit once she gets to the training program, the NASA training program. That's where it goes quite Police Academy. The characters are quite kind of two-dimensional, I would say, but it's still a lot of fun. They have a big night out, singing karaoke. They sing a very good Counting Crows song on the karaoke, don't they? They go to the planetarium. There's a bit of Top Gun type action as she does terrifyingly pilot a fighter jet despite having no flying experience. I was kind of disappointed that it couldn't keep up the momentum that it established in the first act, but yeah, it's still lots of fun, and I would like to see this character again. I would say. I mean, we had Legally Blonde 2. Why not Space Cadet 2? Over on Netflix, arriving on Wednesday the 3rd of July, we have a new 3-part documentary series called The Man with 1,000 Kids. And here's a clip.
I always wanted to be a mom.
We wanted to have a family together.
A sperm donor is making up 50% of your child.
I got to know him on the internet.
He had curly hair.
We really hope that our kids have his hair.
We were totally sold. I'm ready to have beautiful babies.
9 months later, I had a baby boy.
But that wonderment was totally ripped from us.
So not so long ago, I watched a documentary, I think it was on Sky and Now TV, called The Baby Daddy, about this American sperm donor who, kind of working independently really as kind of freelance, he had fathered a worryingly large number of children through sperm donation. And he was in the documentary, and so were his family and the people that he'd donated to. I thought, it must be another series about the same guy. No, it isn't. It's about this Dutch character called Jonathan Meyer, who he kind of looks sort of like a strapping great Viking type. He's got long, curly, blonde hair. And anyway, yeah, he was sort of advertising privately as a sperm donor. Now, he doesn't appear in this, interestingly, but is a lot of testimony from women who used him as a sperm donor. There is regulation around donating sperm because, for starters, you've got to have kind of screening, physical and mental health screening. But also it has to be restricted because you can't have one donor creating too many kids. Well, anyway, this all comes out in the series. The women who are recalling, meeting him or seeing he makes all these videos on YouTube of his travels around the world and his thoughts about anything from like eating raw meats to all sorts of weird things. Anyway, so they meet him and he says, I'm only going to father like a maximum of 5 kids through being a sperm donor. And it turns out that he's just, well, as the title suggests, and not just in the Netherlands, but potentially all over the world, he has fathered so many children through donation. And especially in the Netherlands, people start meeting other people whose kids bear a staggering resemblance to their own kids. And they realise, hang on, this is like a half sibling living, just down the road, or the kids in the same school as my kids. So the ramifications of that, should the kids, when they're older, form a connection, fall in love. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about. So it's a staggering story. I mean, unfortunately, he's not in it to give an explanation of like, what was his motivation? I mean, was it purely financial, or has he got some kind of God complex about, populating the world with his kids? So the good thing about the Sky doc was they filmed a lot of the man himself, and you got a bit more of a sense of him, and also how it was impacting. He had his own family, including his son, who was kind of like being bullied at school because of what his dad did, and his family were very angry, as his Jewish family. I wonder what connects these guys psychologically. Who knows? But it's a staggering story, really. And you can imagine for these parents who'd had the joy of finding someone who they thought, this guy would make a great kind of donor father, and being all excited, and their dreams come true, and they get pregnant and they have the kid, and then suddenly they're reading these stories and thinking, hang on, this is the guy, and there's all these other mothers out there are telling the same story, and it's just getting bigger and bigger, this whole scandal. So I only watched episode 1, but they have kind of stretched it out a fair bit. I think they take quite a long way to get through the story, a long time to get through the story, but it's fascinating. And I would say seek out the one on Now TV as well, because that's a really good watch. What did you think, Hannah?
Do you know what? It's so awful. I mean, it was absolutely fascinating. And like you say, the idea that children start to look like each other, because that's what happens when there are so many children out there that he's fathered. Like you say, does he think he's just a godlike type creature, or does he think, is there some sort of sinister, undercurrent here? I mean, I don't know the answer to that. But obviously the kind of the backdrop of having somebody fathering so many children is a massive worry for the population, and for genetics and everything else that goes with that. And it's just absolutely fascinating. But also for these women who were desperate to be mums, him playing on that sort of emotional vulnerability, if you like. And it's over 3 episodes. It probably does feel a bit strung out, but I think you are completely captured by it, because you just can't believe this is happening, I suppose, and that it's happened, and that it could be happening, and how can that not happen? How can that be governed, if you like? How can you stop that from happening? So I thought it was very interesting.
We're going to finish over on BBC iPlayer with a new drama series which arrived as a box set on Monday the 1st of July. It's called A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And here's a clip.
Always believed that your brother was innocent. So if he didn't, who did?
Guess that's what we need to find out.
There are a million discrepancies about that night. Any one of them could have killed Andy.
What are you girls talking about?
10 nudes.
Max Hastings. He's twisted. Be careful.
You've been stalking me. You're such a good girl, Pip.
Yes, so if any of you are fans of Holly Jackson, then this is for you, because this is an adaptation of Holly Jackson's novel series, and it's really quite pacey. It's really quite good. It's an adaptation, so it obviously doesn't stick directly to the original words, which they often don't. But I don't think that matters particularly. I think it's brilliant in its own way. And this stars Emma Myers, who plays the part of Pip Fitz-Amobi, who is a teenager, completely haunted and completely kind of her whole world is taken over by this apparent murder-suicide, which involved 2 of her schoolmates several years earlier. And it was in this very small rural town of Little Kilton. Now, she is a true crime enthusiast. It will appeal to lots of people who are. We all love to be that sleuth, don't we, that can kind of go out there and, oh yeah, I know better than the police. And this is her. And she just feels that there's something that doesn't smell right in this case. Something is a little bit off. It's a little bit wrong. And her teenage imagination runs wild. And that's why I think this book did so well, because we can all see a little bit of ourselves in it. And if you're a bit obsessed with that kind of thing, thinking all the clues and, you know, what's gone on, what have they missed. And she kind of is absolutely determined to try and find the killer, thinking that the killer could still be about and not captured. And it works really well because she's very, very young looking, you know, she's very innocent, sort of the kind of girl at school who I'd imagine was a bit of a bookworm, you know, very studious, quite, well, very sharp, very bright, and she's so determined, and I think that's really admirable. It's a really lovely thing to see in her. So there she is trying to, but of course it gets her into loads of trouble, as you'd imagine. It's not an easy path trying to uncover who the real murderer is and getting ourselves into lots of scrapes. There's a romantic side to this of, you know, a bit of love that she finds. So it's got all the kind of ingredients of a great book, which now is on the screen. And so, despite the fact that the police think they've got or think they know the person who did it because they admitted to it before taking their own life, she's convinced that's not all that it seems. And so, yeah, as I say, we see her going on quite epic journeys here, there and everywhere to try and uncover who was at the bottom of this, who did this, and everybody else just wants to forget about it because obviously in this small town it was something that was dreadful. It was a real blight on their town, and they just want to forget it. They feel like it's done, that the person is now dead, they're not around anymore. It you know, in terms of the person, the killer, I should say. And so, yeah, for me, it really, really worked. I thought she played an absolutely great part. And it's quite creepy and eerie in places too. But I think anyone who likes the book will really enjoy this. What did you think, Ian?
Yeah, I liked it. And there's a Florida connection to this week's pod because Emma Myers, who plays Pip, she's from Florida, but she is very convincing, playing quite a posh young lady who's grown up in this sort of rural town of Little Kilton. So yeah, she's very wholesome, isn't she? And she seems kind of younger than her years. She's got that innocence. So there's an element of it, of course, the, you know, kids sleuthing reminds you a bit of Enid Blyton, I guess, but it's also more grown up and darker than that. And she's kind of probing into some quite rich kids in the area. There's almost a sort of Bridget Jonesy type scene where she and her friend are waitresses at this very posh party, and they have to dress up in fancy dress, and that's quite well done. It's quite funny. But at the same party, there's quite a disturbing scene where she's quizzing one of the potential suspects, who confusingly is called Max Hastings, but no, he's not the journalist and historian. And the only way he will answer questions about the night of the murder, you know, he was with the boy who confessed to the killing and then committed suicide, is that she must drink a shot before he will answer a question. So he's kind of getting her drunk in this sort of basement room, and he's throwing darts at a dartboard. So it's, you know, it's got a dark side as well. So yeah, I thought it was good. It's got some good cast in it as well. You've got Anna Maxwell Martin playing her mum, and Gary Beadle playing her dad, and Matthew Bainton, yes, from Horrible Histories and Ghosts, as a teacher. Well, we've got to that time Hannah, where we find out what you've been binge watching on this week.
Well, obviously the football, because everyone still is for now, or when we're recording this, they are. And then I was also having a look at Prime Video because I was watching the end of the Celine Dion documentary that we talked about last week, and I was really kind of involved in that. And then some other stuff came up as suggested views, and I ended up watching Britain's Identical Quads on Prime, which is their Extraordinary People range. I really like those documentaries. They're good.
I did watch an interesting rockumentary on Netflix, which is worth looking at. It's all about James Blunt, and who comes across as an amazing guy who, of course, served in Kosovo in the war, and has been absolutely traduced by the British tabloid press, like so many famous people.
Don't get me on to James Blunt. I absolutely adore him. I watched him at BBC Two Radio Party in the Park, I think it was last year, and he went in a dinghy, was all the way across all of the crowds, surfed them in this dinghy. He is so funny. If you ever see him on Twitter, now X, you've got it, he's funny.
Agreed, he is officially a good egg. Now, we've just got time, Hannah, to look ahead to next week's offerings.
Well, Sarah Goldberg and Susan Stanley star as half-siblings searching for their father in comedy drama Sisters on UKTV Play even.
And Rashida Jones teams up with a robot in Sunny, an Apple TV Plus comedy mystery set in Japan. Yes, so we look forward to those and much, much more. But in the meantime, listeners,